Trigger warning. This story talks and/or mentions death and illness. The love of my life is dying, and he wants me to date his doctor. Part 1. The love of my life is dying, and I have no fucking idea how to deal with it. For one thing, I'm never sure what to think about first. Sometimes it's about cooking something for Josh, my boyfriend. Sometimes it's about cleaning, and other times it's about the economic situation that we have suddenly found ourselves in. If I'm not thinking about those things, then I'm thinking about making sure that Josh has taken all of his medicines for the day. Because apparently, if anything his doctor is sure about, is that although Josh will not live long, we have to make sure that it's not too painful for him. And honestly, during my moments of weakness, I always end up thinking that I should have taken the warning when it was first given to me. But I wear my heart on my sleeves. So I put the warning aside and fell in love with an ailing person. Now this is the result. You know, right? I don't watch this shit, Josh says, pulling me out of my Riviera. I'm sorry, I reply and grab the remote. It is a shit show. American reality shows suck anyways. I'm not sure why I was putting Josh through such pain. But you know what they say about falling in love with the strangest thing. Cartoon Network is probably the safest option now, so I'll put that on. I know about falling in love in the strangest places, he replies, a hint of a smile on his face. Have you eaten? You pay so much attention to me. Show some love to yourself, Eric. I do, I reply and get up before you can see my tears. Liar, Josh replies, his tone now mournful. You're a big fat liar, Eric. That is usually how our interactions go these days. It's not like they didn't get bad before, but sometimes now all we do is say mournful stuff to each other, skirting around the major elephant in the room, and never really daring to acknowledge it. Sometimes I get tired of running around in circles. Whenever that happens, I lock myself in the balcony and smoke to my heart's content. One of these days, I'm going to get cancer because of it. Sometimes Josh follows after me. The sound of the television now background noise. Give that to me, he says, pointing at the cigarette between my fingers. I snort. Do you want to get cancer now? Is one not enough? I don't think my body's capable of building a new disease, so no. Josh snatches his cigarette from my hand, and with trembling fingers makes do with it. I don't want you to die terribly and alone, Eric. Either. Stop smoking and drinking or find yourself a new guy. Why don't you shut up? I really thought my words lack any real bite. The heart's doing bad. Please don't say harsh things to me. I poke my tongue against my cheek and look at his slim frame. Whenever any of our relatives come to meet us, they're always shocked at the sight of Josh. They say, Josh, you've lost so much weight. As if Josh doesn't already know that. When one looks at Josh now, they will not believe me if I tell him Josh used to be a local boxer in his better days. But now, all he is long limbs with pale, thin skin stretched over them. His disease now eating him from within. Why are you looking at me like that? Josh asks. Like how? Like you don't want to miss anything. Josh answers and dips his head low. You know, that makes me feel sad. Stop doing that. Well, you cannot get upset at me for trying to put everything in my head. The details. Old age will take that away from you, he answers. I'm far from old age, though. This time my voice cracks. God, to even imagine living without him for the next 40 or 50, or even more years is impossible. It sounds like a personal hell to me. I feel like I'm being punished. I say next, and perhaps I should learn to keep my mouth shut for loving you. There are tears in Josh's eyes. When he looks for me, I did warn you, though. Oh, well, there it goes. A few days later, Josh is sitting on the balcony, swinging his legs back and forth, as if he's a kid. In some ways, he is. Just a week or so ago, he said to me, now that I know my death is near, I fear I'm going to forget what carelessness feels like. The same day, he burned his hand on the stove, because apparently that reminded him that he was still alive. It was a horrible sight to come to, and to hear him say those words. Even more horrible now. I spend most of my time at home. My company was kind enough to let me work from home. I have an inkling that they probably believe this issue of mine would be cleared within a few weeks anyway, so no issue in giving work from home. So, Josh says, looking at me with his tired, sunken eyes. So? I ask, stopping my work for a while. What do you think? About what? I ask. How are we paying the bills, Eric? I poke my tongue against my cheek. I will see what I can do. I can ask for my salary if that works out. Will they pay? Josh asks, sounding tired. Sometimes I miss making things easy for you. When was the last time I went to the office anyway? Doesn't matter, I reply. I will find some way. My kidney has failed, Eric, Josh replies, as if I don't already know that. It's the second time. I do not understand why you're wasting money. It's not wasting money if it's going to save your life, I reply. As if. Josh sighs and looks away from me. For a few minutes, he remains silent. I nearly return to my work, grateful that this conversation will not lead to another argument. But my hope remains fickle because Josh turns to me with a smile. Why don't you ask for help, he asks. From who? I ask. My parents are dead and yours don't want anything to do with us. I can beg them, though. They'd probably want that. Let's not start that, Eric. You know better than that. Josh gets up to sit next to me. I know the conversation is far from over, so I switch off my laptop and turn to him. You can ask Jack. The scoff that I let out is loud in our home. Jack, are you serious? He's a friend, Josh replies, sounding a little irritated now. He will help. He is your doctor, I exclaim. Do you know how absurd your suggestion sounds? You want me to ask the man to loan us some money so that I can pay him? That sounds insane, Josh shrugs. Not like we have any other option. Still, no. Josh, I will not do that. Josh sighs and lies down on the bed. He has a crush on you. He reminds me. You know, it's not going to be very difficult. Besides, he did call you gorgeous once. The laugh that I let out isn't humorous. That was when you weren't sick and when he wasn't your doctor. Heck, he thought I was single. Josh shrugs. Doesn't change the fact that he's got a crush on you. Please don't do that, Josh, I reply and lie next to him. Why don't we sleep? Okay, Josh replies, sounding just a tad bit tired now. A couple of days later, Jack has come to meet Josh to give him a regular checkup outside the hospital vicinity, but Josh insists it's more for me than for him. The very idea of that is ridiculous. The thought that he's trying to set me up with the first guy he sees me next to is bizarre. The thought that he's accepted his fate in itself is bizarre. But Jack tells me that Josh is doing alright. Well, as alright as he can in his condition. And I do not know how to respond to that. Why do doctors lie when they know there's no hope? Well, I'm retiring to bed, Josh announces past 9 p.m. You haven't eaten anything, I reply, reminding him the last time he ate was 7 p.m. Dinner will be ready in a while, so wait it out. I'm tired, Eric, he informs me, and then directs a smile at Jack. I've eaten. I've taken my medicine. Any more food and I will die a fat man. But still, I insist. Please, Eric? Let me have the last word once in a while. I know it isn't said to reprimand me, but I feel the same anyway. I duck my head low, murmur a small good night to him, and return to cooking. Jack stands on the edge of the living room, a little more awkwardly than before. Please, Jack, Josh says before he leaves. Make sure you eat before you leave. Eric is a brilliant cook. It was a running joke between us that he should be the house husband between us both. Well, when I was better anyway. Jack gives us both a smile, but doesn't say anything. He's polite like that. When Josh leaves, Jack stands in the living room for a while before he comes to me in the kitchen. He stands a little too close to me, and desperate as I am for the human touch, do not tell him to stand away. I hope you're doing well, he says, and places his wine glass in the sink. Can I help with anything? And please, I insist. I'm not a guest. I'm a friend. I give him a smile. Everything's done, actually. If you want, you can help me set up the dining table. This should be quick. Oh, I can do that, he replies. Thank you. Dinner is a quick affair. We do not have much to speak to each other, and I'm very conscious of Josh. I know he's not sleeping. He's waiting, probably, to see if I will do something. Josh is crazy like that, and I'm not in the mood to prove his theory right. His theory that there's a good chance that I may fall in love with his doctor after his death. After all, no idea is more bizarre than that. How's work? Jack asks. I shrug in response. As good or bad as it can be. Jack takes a moment to respond. Do you want any help, Eric? And I'm not sure what comes over me, but I tell him that he may be helpful after all. It's probably because of the words Josh has been saying for a long while, that we can ask for Jack's help, and that we do not have much money to make sure Josh's treatment goes smoothly. And as ashamed as I am to say it, I tell him that he can help me with money. It's for, some property? I begin sweating buckets, because I know I'm not a good liar. Josh has wanted to build a home there for a while, and he says that, since his illness is getting bad, we should be quick about that. Jack smiles at me, and I know he can see through me. Okay, Eric. Okay? I asked, looking at him in surprise. But you don't even know how much I need. Do I need to? I'll help you regardless. I swallow. I don't know what to say. Jack gives me a small laugh. Traditionally, we say thank you. I smile at him. Thank you, Jack. And, he says, next, pointing at my face. There's something on your face. Crap, I swallow and try to wipe it away. But the effort is fruitless, and the traditional Hollywood cliché wins. Jack leans over the table and grabs a napkin and dabs it over the corner of my mouth. And suddenly I hope that Josh hasn't seen it half an hour later, when the house is very silent and Josh is definitely asleep. Jack and I enter the balcony. I bring out a cigarette and place it between my lips, before offering another to Jack. He smiles at me in a kind way doctors do and shakes his head. You don't smoke? I ask. I avoid, he agrees. As a doctor, I have got to make the right choices. Right choices are overrated, I tell him, snorting as I light my cigarette. Jack goes silent for a while, and then unexpectedly grabs a cigarette from my mouth. I look at him, a little astounded, but he only smiles in return. You're correct. Right choices are overrated. And while sharing the cigarette, we start talking about Josh. And immediately the mood turns mournful, and before I know what's happening, I'm leaning into Jack's sturdy space to hug him. When he runs a hand through my hair, I know I should push him away, but kindness is needed, and I hug him tighter. Even though we don't do anything, I feel like a cheater. A few days later. Trauma bonding is a real thing, by the way, Josh tells me, looking at me over the new book he's reading. It's a thick book with more than 1,000 pages, and Josh often jokes that he will not stay alive to finish it all. What's that got to do with us, I ask. Nothing. I'm saying if something like trauma bonding can be real, then so can grief bonding. I don't know if there's a term for that. My question stays the same. Why are we talking about it? Jack is our friend. He's been for a long time. You do not think he's grieving my death too? His jokes these days sound so sad. I almost end up smacking him. You're still alive, I remind him. Yeah, but I'm in the process of dying. Josh puts down his book. Jack is going through the same thing as you are. This is a good opportunity to get close. And do what? I ask. Josh shrugs. Find a common ground. A few days later. Bella, my sister, is sitting on the porch with her 2 kids when I arrive at her place. I informed her earlier that we needed to talk about something that I've admittedly been thinking about for some time. I know she knows what I'm thinking. Let me send them inside, she tells me, and waves her children inside. I smile at the kids until they leave. What is it, Eric? Got any updates about your boyfriend or something? You know what I'm thinking, I reply, sitting next to her. Bella is my older sister, and after our parents died, she practically raised me. Then, she got lucky in life and found the love of her life. Now she's got a lovely family, and I'm about to lose mine. What do people do in these situations? I'm about to ask her to help raise mine. Have you talked to him? She asks. I shrug. I will, eventually. You know you need his consent first before we take this step, right? She asks. Her tone harsh, as if she's annoyed. Then her expression softens. Eric, I know you're afraid, and I'm here to help. I will be your surrogate, but inform him first about what's going on in your head. That's important. I will talk to Josh. How else will I be able to do it? I sigh and lean against a chair, starting up at the open skies right in front of us. You think he will be okay? Do you think he will like it? Bella shrugs. His birthday's coming up, right? Tell him it's a birthday gift. That's cruel, I tell her. Okay, I get it. That is cruel. But tell him your fears. Maybe he will understand. I nod at her. I will. The same day, I decided to talk to Josh about it. I know the longer I wait, the harder it will be to convince him of the same. And honestly, I want this to work out. Greedy as I am to have something of Josh behind, I do not really intend to stop at anything. But Josh looked a little skeptical at my words. Eric, you're afraid, Josh tells me. There's no other explanation for this. I'm not afraid. I should have thought of this before anyways. Do you understand how mean that sounds? What if the baby gets it? We don't know that, I reply, sounding more confident than I felt. Let's try. Oh no, he tells me and shakes his head. We are not doing that. Eric, he says next when I throw my hands in the air. You're greedy. You're acting greedy because you don't want to deal with grief. This is not how things work. I stare at him for a moment. Can you blame me for that? Josh's expression softens. No, I think I would have done the same. A few days later, for some reason, Josh decides to give it a try. The samples are taken and everything seems to be going well. And then Josh suggests that we should talk to the doctors first, before making the final decision. Though annoyed and exhausted, I agree with him. Bella's okay with it? Josh asks, walking side by side. She brought it to my attention first, I tell him, and then I couldn't move on. Josh softly smiles at me. Let's hope that it works out then. I give him a fickle of a smile. Yes, Josh. I want that very badly, honestly. Of course, the doctor has much to tell us. We cannot guarantee that the baby will not have it, or will not be more prone to it as it grows. So, I say, does that mean we cannot take the chance? The doctor shakes his head. Of course you can. But your question was if the baby should have it. I'm answering your question. Just because a parent has a certain disease does not mean the baby will definitely have it too. But the baby will be at a higher risk than most babies. And I cannot lie about that fact. So it's a bad idea, Josh concludes. No, it's not, I tell him. We can still try. Don't be greedy, he tells me. We're not going to risk a baby's life just because you cannot handle grief, Eric. I'm sorry if that sounds horrible. By now, both of us have walked out of the doctor's office. The doctor said we can still try, I insist. Think about having a copy of yours. One that I won't even get to meet? Josh asks, his voice now hysteric. I know that I've said the wrong thing and backtracked. I didn't mean that, Josh. Listen, we can try. No, we cannot, Josh replies, his tone firm. I don't want you to end up with another version of me, alright? I'd rather you just focus on someone else. And who might that be? I ask. Jack, Josh answers. He's a good guy. Listen, take the sample back. We're not talking about it again. When I do not answer, he glares at me. Take the sample back, Eric. We're not doing it. I swallow. I'm not going to do it, but I nod at him anyway. Okay. A few weeks later, I meet Jack in the supermarket next. It's after 10 and the supermarket is empty, save for 4 or 5 of the customers. Jack and I are 2 of them. He finds me first, but I notice him in the reflection of a mirror without his notice. Hi, he says. Oh, Jack, hi. Late night shopping? He asks, pointing at my basket. I nod at him. Yeah, Josh has been sick a lot these days. I didn't get the time the entire week and now I'm here. There's nothing at home. He nods at me, a solemn look on his face. Would you like some ice cream? Ah, I reply, looking around us. I guess that's all right with me? Okay, Jack smiles at me and then stretches his arm around my body to grab 2 ice cream cones. Despite the intimacy of the position, I try not to overthink it. In a way, I'm glad that Josh is not here to see this. Because Jack is a friend and he knows almost everything about us anyway, I decided to tell him about the surrogacy plans. He nods at me and stares ahead at the empty road. It's not a very bad idea, he tells me. The doctor warned us and Josh doesn't want to take the risk. He has every reason to, Eric. Jack turns to me. His posture is so relaxed yet confident that I cannot help but relax too. At the same time, although the risk is always high, the disease itself isn't contagious. Just because Josh has it doesn't necessarily mean your baby will have it too. If you both are alright with the idea, then you guys don't need to stress much on it. The only reason he's saying no is because he's afraid I will have to deal with the pain again. He doesn't want that for me. Ah, Jack says, smiling at me. Love. I nod at him, and then I lean my head against his bicep. I'm going to miss him. You do not have to do it alone, Jack tells me softly. I've been a friend over 7 years now. I guess we can learn to deal with it together. Grief bonding, I mutter, and I look at him. Our faces only inches away. Despite the closeness and need for intimacy, I do not feel that I really need to kiss him. Josh says it's that, I tell him when he looks confused. He says he doesn't know if there's an actual term for it, but he calls it that. Says we should become better friends because we're dealing with the same. I'm not dealing with the same pain though, Jack murmurs, and I pull back to give him a strange look. Honestly, we cannot compare pain. What you feel and what I feel are different. You're losing your lover, and I'm losing a friend. I've known him for my whole life. I agree. But maybe we can learn to live with it and grow with it together, Jack suggests. When I only nod at him, he brings a hand close to my face to push away the fringes of my eyes. I pull back from his touch and we do not talk about it again. Jack returns to his home and I return to mine. I decide not to tell Josh about it, even though nothing really happened between us. A few days later, in the next few days, Josh's health deteriorates. The doctors, one of them being Jack, tell me it's the end and Josh will probably not live past this weekend. I decide to ignore their words and focus on making sure Josh isn't in pain. In the last few days over the phone, Bella and I have argued endlessly about the surrogacy. She's ready to do it, but is worried that Josh will die without knowing it. Each time I tell her that I will tell Josh, he will have to know for this to work. But before anything like that can happen, Josh goes into a coma. How bad will it be if he dies without knowing? I ask Bella. Very bad, she replies. You know better than that. You'll not be able to live with the guilt of it. I'm telling him though, I reply, sounding unsure even to myself. And she's not listening. Bella reminds me rather gently. Yes, I agree. Days before he went into a coma, Josh looked at me and asked me what I thought of the good doctor. I looked at him in return, my eyebrows raised in mock concern. Whatever does that mean? I asked, looking away to hide my guilt. He clearly likes you, Josh replied, and threw his hands in the air with a sigh. And what am I supposed to do with that information? I asked. Respond, Josh replied. I'm not going to respond to anything, Josh. Can we drop it already? But he likes you, and you'll probably be lonely after I... He stopped and shook his head. I know how you are as a person, and I know that you will eat yourself up over this, but when I'm gone, you can always get together with him. Staying together will heal you better and quickly. I said we can drop it, Josh? You'll be lonely, Josh said, suddenly looking very tired and exhausted. And what if I prefer it that way? I asked. I can always have the baby. I'm dropping it. Now you drop that too, he looked at me. Will you? I shrugged at him. Then a few days later, he went into a coma. A couple days later, because now I can stay at the hospital with Josh, I often get to meet Jack whenever he's on duty. Something I admit I both rejoice and hate. Rejoice because Jack is familiar and a friendly face among the sea of unfamiliar ones, and the time isn't right, and I am anything but stable. And Jack seems like my best bet at keeping sane. I hate it because although I like that I'm around a familiar face, I dislike that it's him. Because suddenly all that Josh has said makes sense. It's obvious Jack likes me. The question is, do I want to take a chance with him? No. Even the thought of that is strange. Josh is on his deathbed and I'm supposed to think if I will be able to hit it off with his doctor? That's the last thing on my mind. Even when Jack does what he does a couple days later. It's late at night and Josh gave us some responses throughout the day. Jack and the other doctor, Ellie, has said that that's a good thing, although not a very hopeful thing. But I hung up on the words and imagined that maybe Josh would get better and come out better after this weekend. And it's that very thing that Jack and I started discussing in the dead of night. Jack's on his break. There's a good chance that he'll live, right? I ask. Jack gives me a particular look. What do you want me to tell you? The truth, I tell him. Although that's the last thing I want to hear. I want to know if Josh will be alright. Josh is not going to be alright, Eric. He's dying. Got 2 minor heart attacks in the last 2 days. Do you think it's getting better? His words are cruel. And although I open and close my mouth to reply, I'm not sure what to say. Please shut up. I'm sorry, Jack tells me, and exchanges a hand for me to take. I hate that he's like that. It's not his fault. He was born with it. It's no one's fault. The symptoms were always present. They got triggered and that's natural, Eric. Unfair, but natural. His hand finds me in the dark, and because it's so quiet outside, I unwittingly step close to him. We were supposed to live out our life together. I inform him, as if he hasn't heard that one before. Now we'll have to go and bury him? That's cruel. I'm sorry, he tells me, and squeezes my hand. And I'm not sure what he understands by our closeness, but before I know it, he has dipped his head to my height to plant a kiss on my mouth. After a flicker of surprise, I feel upset. I push him away and look at him, confused and horrified. What was that? I'm sorry, he says and steps away. I thought, were you the one pushing thoughts in Josh's head? About what? He asks. About you and me. About you having a chance with me or some stuff. No, Jack replies and shakes his head. I've never done that. Why would I? Then why did you kiss me? Because I like you, Jack replies, and then sighs. Clearly wrong timing. I'm sorry. I misunderstood things and not that anything can justify my behavior, but still. Bye, I tell him. Eric? I said bye. Okay, I will see you in the morning, alright? Josh's regular checkups. Yeah, alright. I watch him leave, and when I'm sure he's no longer there, I throw my phone against the wall in an act that I almost immediately regret. But before anything else can happen, Josh dies in his sleep. He never wakes up from his coma, and the doctor, Jack, tells me that he's sorry he couldn't save Josh. I'm not sure what to say to him, so I tell him that I need some time alone. And then for the first time in the longest time, I finally cry. A few days later, Jack shows up at Josh's funeral. He sits in the back and does not come to meet me until everyone's gone. Bella sits next to me throughout the process and holds my hand whenever she thinks I need it. In most cases, I need it. There's a reason why she's such a good sister. After the funeral is over and I've said my piece, Jack comes to stand next to me. "How are you doing?" "Bad," I tell him. Sleep evades me, even though that's all I want. "If it continues, you can tell me," Jack says. "I will help." "Sure. Doctors have a cure for everything. Do you have a cure for heartbreak?" A furrow comes between his brows. "You're drunk." He's not asking, he's making a statement. "Are you alright? Should I drive you home?" I talked to Bella. Shit was so crazy. I had to drink. I wave my hand at his face. "Will you come and drink with me tonight? I need it." "I don't drink, Eric." I know I'm going to regret it, but even then I hold his hand and press a kiss on the corner of his mouth. "I need a drink. Will you come with me?" "You and I both know I should not do it alone." I repeat. Jack swallows, and I feel a tad bit guilty about using his feelings. But then he says yes, and I know it doesn't have to be so bad. So after I wave Bella goodbye, and she promises me that she will think about surrogacy, something that she's been doing a lot lately, Jack and I leave in his car. And by the night, I am drunk out of my wits. If there's anything I did with him the night before, I do not remember it the next morning. Not that I want to. To be continued. The second part of the story is already up for the members. If you want early access to the next part of the story, consider joining our channel membership and support our work. Stay tuned for the next part of the story coming up next Saturday. What would you do if you were in any of the characters' shoes? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.